Greetings, InRange viewers. This is Russell Fagan, aka Sinister Rifleman, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the PSA Jakl. Carl's passions lie primarily with historical and Old West firearms, and with modern firearms like all these AR-15 derivatives, he has a hard time being very passionate about it outside of the WWSD project. Accordingly, he asked me to take the lead on this one, as I generally enjoy trying a lot of different AR-15 style configurations. But full disclosure, my day job is as director of KE Arms, so I will be using some KE Arms components in this build. In this case, I'll be using a KE15 forged aluminum lower, serial number 416, because I think that's funny. While Palmetto does sell a variety of complete Jakl firearms, they also sell uppers and build kits separately, so I thought I'd give this a try assembling it on one of my own lowers. We purchased at retail cost of about $830 a 5.56 14.5-inch upper with permanently attached flash hider for 16-inch legal length. Every upper sold comes with a bolt catch with a thinner paddle. More on that in a moment. The Jakl's long stroke piston operating system is self-contained in the upper, including the recoil spring, which allows the use of side folding stocks. Accordingly, I purchased this lower parts kit from Palmetto for about $260 that includes the F5 folding stock with the specific adapter for the Jakl system. This is the kit I installed in the lower for the mud test. It also includes a refined mil-spec style trigger. I also purchased this adapter block to use on a different lower so we could try the Jakl with a variety of other Picatinny style attachment system stocks. In the interest of full transparency, here are the receipts for the items we purchased. Palmetto State Armory did not respond to our request for a T&E sample, so we purchased these items using Patreon funds. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't allow us to show the installation process of parts anymore. While there are people showing these processes on YouTube, it's a pretty quick way for us to get a channel strike. This photo is from PSA's video on how to install the stock assembly for the Jakl, and what I found was doing it the way they recommended did not allow me to tighten down the stock all the way. The threaded insert that goes into the lower receiver has a slot on one side for a screwdriver and a recessed hole with a step on the other. Palmetto states that the threaded insert should be installed with the slot for the screwdriver facing to the rear. Unfortunately, the step on the other side prevented me from tightening down the bolt enough so that the stock wouldn't wobble around. Tightening the bolt up against the rubber bumper pulls the screw down into that recessed hole, but the rubber is squishy and it is getting pulled down into the hole with it, and accordingly the stock can't be tightened enough so that it doesn't wobble when installed this direction. I installed the insert facing the opposite way so that the rubber bumper made it up flat against it, and I was able to tighten down the screw sufficiently so that the only play in the stock was inherent to the design of the stock itself and not from a loose fit. The proprietary bolt catch installs like any other AR-15 bolt catch, however the paddle is thinner because the upper receiver itself is wider and thicker than a traditional AR-15 receiver, so it needs to be thinner so that you can press it down all the way to close the bolt after it locks open. Here's the lower with the Palmetto State Armory parts kit installed. Other than the stock installation, there were no issues. Everything fit and functioned normally. And finally, here is the Jakl as configured for the mud test. As previously seen on the channel, the Jakl passed the mud test with flying colors. The upper was relatively easy to clean, though I did remove the barrel from the upper to do so. That was easily accomplished with 2 Torx bits. Cleaning out the lower, getting all the mud out of all the little spring and detent holes was much more of a pain. After the mud test, I prepared to use the Jakl at the Phoenix 2-Gun Action Challenge match. I swapped out the fire control group for a KE Arms SLT2 trigger, ambi selector and ambi magazine catch. On the upper, I installed a lead and steel Promethean LP1, a SIG Juliet 4 magnifier, and a set of Troy low-profile backup sights. I zeroed both the iron sights and the red dot optic at 50 yards with Wolf M193 ammunition. At 50 yards, I was consistently getting about a 1-inch group with this ammunition. This match doesn't have a very high round count on this first stage. There's only 10 hits required on these 5 paper targets, switching ports between each target engaged. Unsurprisingly, shooting this rifle reminds me more of shooting an AK than an AR. While there is some sight picture disruption from the reciprocating mass, the recoil impulse is smooth and nothing that you couldn't get used to. Throughout this event, I'm using PMags with a 55 grain ammunition. Because the event was so low round count, I enlisted one of our patrons, Carson, to help me test the Jakl at this event. He's using USGI magazines with 77 grain ammunition. Without any prompting after our first stage, Carson stated that shooting the Jakl reminded him of shooting a nicely gassed AK, and I think that's a pretty good description for how it feels to shoot. On this stage, the rifle started empty, slung on your shoulder, and after engaging all these paper targets with a pistol with one round, you then had to engage them all with your support side shoulder with another single round. While I didn't have any problems shooting this off my support side shoulder, in general, shooting this rifle, I'm starting to dislike the F5 stock because of the way my cheek fits into the space between the lower portion that is telescoping and the top of the stock that the forward portion of my cheek fits against. Carson also didn't care for the stock, noting that it had a good amount of flex side to side. Changing sides of the charging handle is relatively easy to perform by just pulling the upper open, taking the recoil spring out, pulling the bolt to the rear, and then swapping the charging handle over to the opposite side. But we didn't feel the need to do that for just one stage where we needed to shoot off our support side shoulders. Carson is also left-handed. Because this was also a relatively low round count stage, we chose to shoot the next stage in the highest round count manner possible. This stage has a 60-second par time. There's a single silhouette at 100, another smaller target at 200, and a spinner target at 200. Once you get the 100-yard target and fire one shot, hit or miss at the 200-yard target, you have to move on, but you can engage the spinner as much as you want to from any position. So I opted to go for the spinner just to get the round count up. This is a challenging target presentation. The top plate is 8 inches, the bottom plate is 10 inches. They start to move as I hit the target, and there's a good crosswind out there at 200 yards. I hit the spinner enough to get it about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way over, but the further I got into this engagement, the more misses I started having for every hit. I have rotated spinners successfully with 5.56 at this distance before. In fact, with a 20-inch gun, I've done it in as little as 7 hits. I have successfully rotated a spinner at 200 before with a 14.5-inch rifle, but it did require 15 to 20 hits to get the job done. I'm just not getting hits quick enough here, and I end up parring out with only one 5-second bonus. For testing purposes, Carson opts to shoot the stage the same way I did, even though it's not the best thing to do for his score. It's worth noting only one shooter out of the whole match successfully rotated the spinner, and that was with a 6.5 Creedmoor. Using 77 grain ammunition, Carson is imparting more energy on the target when he actually hits it. It's noticeable in how far the target moves, but unfortunately he's still not getting hits fast enough to effectively rotate the spinner. Our experience on this stage is what prompted us to want to do a barrel heat accuracy test. We both felt like the group of our shots opened up the further we got into the stage, but we want to make sure that's not a cope on our part and verify what the gun is mechanically capable of. This stage is also a good example of what I was talking about with more sight picture disruption due to reciprocating mass. Again, the recoil isn't severe, it's actually quite pleasant, but the reciprocating mass does more to shift the shooter off target than a direct impingement system would. It's not a huge difference, but the shooter does have to work more to accomplish the same result. After the match, I verified that the screws that hold the barrel in place had not come loose, and I witness marked them to keep an eye on it for the future, as I've heard that some people have had these come loose on them. I will note that they did come red Loctited in place, and when I reinstalled the barrel after the mud test cleaning, I did red Loctite them again. More magnification is always a good thing for accuracy tests, so I've swapped out the red dot and 4-power magnifier for the Vortex Viper PST 1-6.
We've got the Jakl here, and we've got PMC Bronze 223 Remington, 55 grain. We're going to do a simple group test here. We got a target at 100 yards. We got a little piece of black tape on there. May not exactly hit the tape. It's not about the zero, it's about the group right now. So we're going to fire a nice, slow 5-round group. Try to give you an idea of the accuracy of this gun. We don't normally do group tests on this channel because, as you know, group tests on YouTube, every gun is sub MOA or half MOA, and that's just part of like nonsense. So that's not normally what we do, but we're doing this for a reason. We're going to do a little group here, go down, see what we get, but then we're going to come back and do a heat test, because when Fagan was shooting this, he felt like he may have been having issues with heat dispersion. When the gun got hot, it felt like the zero might have shifted or even opened up. And we don't know if that's true or not. So we've done this test on the channel before. After we get our group, we're going to come back. We're going to dump 30 rounds just into the dirt, let the gun sit for a second so it gets hot and the barrel's hot. And then we're going to shoot another 5-round group at the same point of aim, that piece of black tape. And if everything's right, it might open up a little bit, but it shouldn't open up too much, and it shouldn't shift zero. That's what we're checking for. But first, let's do the 5-round group. Okay, so this was a 50-yard zero, which is why we're hitting high. It's also not my zero. It can move a little right, but we don't care. We're aiming here. But this is what we're looking for, is the group. This one's weird. I did not call any outlier shots. So what's the group of 4?
Basically 2.2 inches.
2.2 inches, and then if you throw the outlier,
That puts it at almost 3.6.
okay, so this is 2.2, and then this would be, if you add it, 3.6, you said?
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and say that this was probably ammo, but we're going to find out when we do another 5-ground group later.
Yep.
But we don't need to change this. This is our group for now. So our center of impact is here if the ammo, if we want to not count the outlier, or here if we count the outlier. What that matters now is when we shoot the 30 rounds into the dirt to get the gun hot, we should see the bullets impact at least entirely in this circle. Fair statement?
Yep.
All right, let's go find out. So I just put a 30-round mag into this gun. We're not aiming at the target with this. We're just dumping this into the dirt to generate heat. Gonna let the gun sit for like 30 seconds. Then we're gonna go to the 5-round mag and we're gonna do another group. So this is just dumping rounds. Okay. That was cool. It's actually pretty controllable in terms of recoil impulse. So now I'm not going to chamber the round because I don't want the round to get hot. I'm going to let it sit for a second. But while we're doing that, I'm going to get on the target. Same point of aim. There we go. All right, now let's fire a group. Let's go see what we got. No flyer this time. So the gun is shooting just around 2.5 MOA. I'm gonna call this ammo. If this was our center of aim before, and now we're hitting right here, after 30 rounds of heat, and it's hot out here by the way, we saw no difference in zero or even dispersion. Pretty much shot the same group. So that tells us, at least from this test of 1, that the heat stress relief on the barrel is done well, and that the gun's not shifting zero based on heat. So we just did this test. We did not find it to have a stress relief issue. When we did like the old Colt SP1 from the 80s and we dumped 30 rounds and then shot, it had a completely different zero. Not only did it have a completely different zero, it actually opened up.
Yep.
This didn't do either. It didn't shift zero and it didn't open up. But it did, by 2 5-round groups before and after getting hot, it shot about a 2.5 MOA group with bronze 223 PMC.
Right.
And you were having some issues, and that's why you wanted to do this heat test, because you were struggling with some of the targets at the match you brought it to recently.
Right. Well, a spinner at 200 yards, that's an 8-inch plate and a 10-inch plate.
Yep.
So essentially, if you got like a 2.5-inch group at 100, that's going to be a 5-inch group at 200. You essentially have 3 inches of hittable target.
What's the top plate you said?
8 inches.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, right. So you've got very little room for error.
Right.
And the bottom one's 10-inch, you said.
Right. Plus wind, plus, you know, imperfect position on a course.
And you're not on a lead sled either.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I have been able to successfully do spinners with DI guns with similar optics packages at the same distance.
I would argue it may not have anything to do with the gas system. It could be something to do with the way the barrel is locked into the trunnion. Could be the gas system. It could be just the quality of the barrel. Could be lots of things, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But generally we're dealing with a gun that's about 1 MOA to 1.5 MOA less accurate than the DI guns I typically shoot.
Yeah, so this isn't an advertisement for What Would Stoner Do, but a What Would Stoner Do carbine will shoot sub 2 minute pretty much all day of the week.
Yeah, 1.5 easily, and like with your Mark 262 ammo, it was like 1 MOA.
It was sub MOA actually. Yeah, we have video of that. So this gun is at least double that, if not more than double, like 2.5, right?
Right.
So with that being said, when you have a small target presentation like that spinner, that I could see where you thought maybe this is a heat issue, but really what it is just the mechanical accuracy of the gun with the mechanical accuracy of you from an unstable position or less stable position.
Definitely a good thing to find out.
So this is where people get really obsessed with groups, right? Groups don't matter that much. And I would say a 2.5 minute gun is practical. It's not an impractical accuracy group.
No, if we were shooting at even like 2/3 size IPSCs that distance, it'd be fine.
But in a competition environment with small target presentations, or in a real world environment where, not to always be grim, but like a headshot at 200 yards, you might miss where you wouldn't with something that has a better mechanical accuracy.
Correct.
Interesting. F5 style stock. It's wobbly, man.
Yeah, it's the material this is made out of just doesn't seem to have
Oh my gosh, it flexes.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to have a high glass content.
Yep.
So it flexes quite a bit. This is clearly an aesthetic choice to make it look like an ACR, not a like shootability choice.
Well, we found from the community, let's be honest, aesthetics seem to matter more than actual function to a lot of people. And this does look cool, but man, that is literally bending.
I don't know about you, I mentioned it on my voiceover, but like this space, when you take the stock out, like my cheek being in here isn't painful, but it's just kind of annoying.
Yeah, if you go back, it is. I don't know if that's a big issue, but sure. But yeah, that is, this feels, okay, so when you're trying to make things at the lowest cost, you make things at the lowest cost. This feels...
That stock by itself, though, sells at a premium price.
It feels like an airsoft part.
I felt airsoft stocks that are nicer than that.
Okay, all right.
It's all about glass content and how inflexible something is.
Yep, so.
Like, I got this Zukov stock adapter set up
Yep.
because I didn't like that.
Yep.
And, like, the Zukov is solid. Like,
hold this. Oh, I can't move it at all.
Right.
This is like...
And Magpul's using an industry standard 30 to 33% glass-filled nylon.
First of all, not wobbly.
Yep.
But you can't bend it either.
Right.
So why, being a person that knows polymer, why would you go with such a low glass, like such a low, what would be the decision for, is there a logic behind this?
So less rigidity means it's less brittle, and if you drop it, it's less likely to break.
You think it's all it is?
Could be. I mean, they might be planning on, because there's more intricate surfaces here, that, you know, if it was dropped or combat racked or mortared, like it might be more prone to just break if it had more
bend versus break.
Yep. So that could be part of the equation. I don't know. I haven't talked to the engineers that designed this, but there's a reason why 30 to 33% glass-filled nylon is an industry standard for this application.
When you feel these next to one another, they are night and day. This is good. This is not good. Like it's as simple as that. Never mind the wobble here. This just bends.
Right. So when you're purchasing these, like pretty much all the complete rifle packages they offer have the F5 stock on it.
Sure.
If you want to get like the Zukov or any of the other Picatinny style stocks, they sell them as lowers or parts kits.
Okay.
So I'd recommend getting like the Zukov stock lower or the Zukov stock parts kit, or they have a lot of JMac stock options as well. Those are like machined aluminum ones that they look pretty cool. So a lot of times the stock you're picking, it's aesthetics as much as function. But something more rigid is going to be better than the F5 stock.
You know what's frustrating about this? This is why polymer gets a bad rap.
To a degree, yeah.
People putting stuff like this out versus stuff like this is part of what we see when people talk polymer. Because this is, you can have an experience with something like this that's literally wobbly and bends. You're going to think badly of polymer, but not all polymer is the same, just like not all steel is the same, right?
Right.
Alloys are different. I don't know if the right word is polymer alloy. What's the right word for that?
Polymer blend, yeah.
Blend. So not all alloys are the same and not all blends are the same, and so you can't judge everything equally. So here's my takeaway. You shot this in competition. You shot it a lot more than I did, right? These things are what, $1,500?
$1,300 for a complete factory rifle.
All right, I was a little off. Sorry, guys. So when I shot it, it's very front heavy, which is what you would expect from a long stroke gas system piston.
With a big rail like this.
Of course, any piston system gets real hot here, and any kind of metallic rail gets real hot right here. In Arizona, where you start at ambient hot, you get to real hot real fast. But that's not a problem so much with this as it is any piston system with a metallic handguard.
Right.
Okay, so you might want to consider like one of your heat wraps or something there.
Yeah, and some of the rail covers don't fit on AR handguards that go into the M-LOK slots because this is more of a flat surface versus a rounded surface.
Interesting.
So some of the M-LOK covers I have wouldn't actually fit into it.
Okay, all right. And then we come to find that we heard a lot of people talk about this, and we know this is out there, that the Picatinny rail on top was out of spec. All right, we got .203. Ooh, 0.1, 0.200. Now this isn't the best precision measuring gauge. 0.201. 0.201. Okay, so I guess we can confirm this because we looked it up and the minimum spec is 0.206 and with plus 8 thousandths. So 0.206 should be the smallest rail slot up to another 0.008 on top of that. These are below the 0.206. Therefore, these are below minimum spec. And if you have certain types of sensitive optics or mounts, they won't fit into the slots between the rails. Now, that said, we didn't have a problem with any of our optics, but that speaks more to the dimensions of the mount than it does the rail. The rail is legitimately too small. May not affect you, but it is something to consider, and it is out of spec, just is, right? I will say that the recoil impulse, because of the weight of the gun, more than anything, is pleasant.
It feels like shooting a nice AK.
It does feel like shooting a nice AK. But then we did group and accuracy size. Turns out it's about a 2.5 minute gun, which is less than you would normally get out of a traditional bolt system like this. When I first heard about this gun and I found out they were using a long stroke gas piston, I was like, who does that anymore? Like, why?
Yeah, everybody's doing short stroke pistons.
Well, why would you do that? You're adding intentional reciprocating mass. What is the perceived advantage? Cleaning? I don't know. I really don't get it.
No, we haven't been able to talk to any of their engineers about what their design theory on this was.
I find that to be a strange choice. A long stroke gas piston, you think about that in an M1 Garand, you think of it in a traditional AKM. When you think of a modern gun, you're like, seems a little archaic, right? Then we get to the stock. The polymer is soft, flexy, not a good blend. All right, I want to hear your take. My take is, and I didn't shoot in competition, if you want a cool toy that looks like a SCAR or ACR, that's what this is. I would not consider this for any practical application. I wouldn't consider it for competition, and I wouldn't consider it a primary.
I think someone buying this is getting it as a curiosity that already owns like somewhere between 6 to a dozen AR-15s already.
Not a first gun, bad idea.
No. It's interesting. I always like trying out new AR-15 derivatives and configurations, and side folding stocks are cool when they're rigid.
Yeah, side folding stock ups your lethality and accuracy with the gun by at least 400%.
Yeah, as a first gun, I don't think so. I think buying that $400, $500 PSA M4 special is a better thing if you're shopping at PSA than getting this right out of the gate.
We did a mud test on a $399 PSA M forgery, and first of all, it shot great. It ran through the mud test. So did this. This passed the mud test. It ran through the mud test, and it shot better groups than this. Just does. Because, you know why? Because it's an M4. It's an AR-15. Here's the thing, guys. The AR-15 solved the problem long ago. This is the gun. We figured it out. It's been solved. Until something else happens that shoots energy beams, in my opinion, anything that isn't an AR is probably lesser. And I think that's what we're seeing repeatedly. The SCAR Light, which is better than this. Other guns, none of them keep up with what the AR just does.
No, and I think from an industry perspective, what we're seeing is so many AR-15s have been sold in the past 4 to 8 years that manufacturers are looking to expand their product lines and give people a reason to have something else to buy.
Absolutely.
And so we're seeing more and more piston system, AR-15, and even like complete polymer gun things coming out from various manufacturers.
Sure.
That I think they're trying to like recapture customers they already had with something different.
Mm-hmm.
But you're getting this because it's different. Like that's the reason to purchase this. You already have a bunch of guns you can count on. You want it as something's just different to play around with.
It was probably 9, if not 8 or 9 years ago on InRange. We were doing, I think it was the Convoy mud test, or dust test, excuse me. And I referred to AR-15s as cordwood back then. Literally stack them up, pick one off the stack, shoot it. When you're done with it, throw it in the trash, get another one. Like, we're even more so down that path now than we ever were in terms of saturation of, not niche and cool, not cool stuff like what would Stoner do, but like AR-15s in general. It's a pretty saturated market.
Right.
I mean, if you want a traditional M4, you can buy it from one of like, it seems like 1,000 vendors, and you can get it for $400. So they are cordwood. That was a right statement then, and it's a right statement now. All these other guns that I've referred to in the past as PMAG adapters, get your PMAGs, keep those, but just stick it into any adapter and shoot. So do you agree with me? Cool if you want. I'm not trying to yuck someone's yum. You want this thing? have at it. It was reliable.
Yeah, perfectly reliable. 0 malfunctions.
It match here on the mud. It just works.
Yep.
Okay, so very reliable. Less accurate, more heavy. Couple parts are a little out of spec, but not within a realm that you can't use it. But for more money than something that would do better.
But one thing you got to keep in mind is buying a SCAR 16 now is $2,600 to $2,800, and this is $1,300. So this is literally for the person who's wanting the SCAR 16 at home.
Yeah, it's a niche gun. It's a toy. It's not practical. I would not recommend it as your first gun. And like I said before, I'm going to repeat myself. Don't get it for practical reasons. Get it if you want something that's reliable and is cool, but it's not your primary.
No. Now, I do think PSA can keep improving this thing.
Sure.
I think they've already offered lighter handguards. They've offered a ton of different barrel lengths. This with a lighter handguard and lighter barrel profile, because this is a medium contour barrel, would be a lot more maneuverable than it is currently.
Rails and spec. That'd be a nice step forward.
Yes.
That said, this is another thing. We talked about this, and this is another day for another video, but I don't want to... That sort of thing sucks, and the problem with that kind of thing is if it really is a problem for you, let's say you only have one optic and it only, like, you have the one mount that doesn't fit on this. Stuff getting out of spec happens. When you're manufacturing in massive numbers, some bit wobbles on the line, you make 1,000 of them, you test a few at the beginning and they're fine, and then a bunch in the middle that aren't fine. That stuff happens. So what's more important about something than something being out of spec is how the company responds to being informed as a customer.
Right. Now, would I return this myself because the rail's 4 thou smaller?
I
No.
wouldn't.
No, it's not worth the hassle.
I said if you had one mount, right? If you have one mount, it's all you got, and you go, hey guys, mine is out of spec, I have one mount, they should fix it for you. I don't think it's enough of a thing to really, like, I wouldn't throw the gun away because of it.
No.
So, getting long here. Conclusion. Yeah, buy, yes, no.
If you have disposable income and you want something different, like, sure. Is it really an enthusiastic recommendation? No, but I don't think you're going to be mad about it if you do, and you have the disposable income to justify it.
Yep. I'm in the same place. If you want a cool toy that looks like something else but isn't what it looks like, because it's not an ACR and it's not a SCAR, right? It's essentially an AK. It's a G36 bolt with an AK gas system. It's a hodgepodge of things that looks like an ACR or a SCAR. If you really, really are dying for that aesthetic, cool, but I think you could do a lot better. So, kind of a real lukewarm review.
Yep, but hey, at least it works.
Yeah, but that said, this is completely honest and real because we bought this.
Yep, paid retail price for it even.
Yeah, we contacted them. We weren't trying to look for a freebie, by the way. We contacted them because we contact manufacturers in general. Sometimes they have a T&E, so you don't have to buy it. They can just send it to you for like a month, right? You don't want to spend the money on it. They can just send it to you, send it back. We've done that a number of times. That's what we were looking for. Or even sometimes they have like a discount or something to buy it at a little bit lower price if you're trying to do content about it. They didn't even respond. So we just bought it straight up. As expensive as it gets.
Yep.
So this is as honest as it gets too, isn't it? So that said, we do have someone else who's going to shoot this at High Desert Battalion. We're going to have a separate video of her experience with it, right?
Yep.
So Gun Bunny is going to shoot that, and stay tuned for another video about the Jakl if you're curious about how this works in that environment. But if you like this kind of review where we literally just spend the money and give you the honest truth, guess what? Patreon.com/InRange TV. We're not a member of any aggregator. We're not of the Octopus Group. There's no Octopus Group governing InRange, never will be, and it's you, the viewer, that keep InRange alive. And this is the kind of stuff we've done now for 9 years because of people like you supporting the channel. Patreon.com/InRange TV. Quite literally, every dollar matters. 50 people joining up at $1 is another $50 a month to do stuff like this: burn ammo, buy stuff, do reviews. If you already are one, appreciate you. Just continue subscribing to the channel, hit that stupid bell, which won't even work, and then share with your friends because the algorithm absolutely hates us, right? I mean, it is what it is. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more.